This is the Home Service Success Podcast, your resource for growing your residential contracting business through sales, marketing, and mindset strategy. Davis here, joined with my co-host, Steven, and today we have an awesome guest for you.
All right, let's get into it. Our guest today is the CEO and the co-founder of the go-to #1 PR agency for home service businesses in the entire industry, hands down. If you haven't heard of her, you're about to hear of her now. So she's definitely the go-to for the home service industry. She's managed marketing and PR for some of the country's most well-known home service companies, and also helped get her clients placements in things like the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Boston Globe, Celebrity Apprentice, the Today Show, and the list continues to go on and on and on. And behind the scenes, I've watched her take things that happen in a home service business that are not ideal in the community and help make sure that it protects, or there are ways to protect that business when those types of things happen, which I think we're going to talk a little bit about that as far as one of the benefits of PR. And then also something really cool that she does is she runs call it a nonprofit. She can confirm or tell me exactly what it is, but a group called Orange Orchard, which is really cool because I believe that we should make sure that we're always pursuing our passions, both in business and outside of business. And so not only is she helping all these home service companies grow, she's also starting this other thing to help preserve wildlife for future generations. So if you're listening to this and you have kids, she and her team are trying to help make sure that we live in somewhat of a sustainable world so that your kids get to grow up and see really cool stuff across the world, and also promote sustainable products that preserve our precious ecosystem. And lastly, don't think I forgot, new author of an absolutely amazing book that I got an advanced copy of right here called Next Level Now. So without further ado, welcome Heather Ripley, the CEO of Ripley PR.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this is going to be a good one. PR is such an interesting topic, right? Like we get it all the time from our clients at WIT. They're like, are you doing PR for me? Are you not? Is marketing PR? There's like this weird gray line of like, what is PR? So Heather, I'd love to have you talk a little bit about what is PR, and then go a little bit into like, how'd you get in this business? Like, why did you start doing this?
That's a good question. Yeah, what is PR is the most common question we hear. A lot of people assume that it's just, we come in when there's a crisis situation and help companies through it, which we do. We do that quite often, but mostly what we do is proactive PR. And basically the easiest way to understand it is, rather than paid media, which is advertising, direct mailers, your truck wraps, things like that you're paying for, it's earned media. So it's getting someone else to say great things about you. So we're kind of, to super simplify it, we're the middleman between your company and the public. So the way that we do it is we reach out to the media, whether it's newspapers, TV reporters, and we try to create news or PSAs that your company can get information about the company and its services out to the public. And it builds trust and credibility getting that third party to talk about you. So that's really the easiest way to explain it.
That's awesome. I love it. It's basically like, we look at things and we call like social proof, right? We put on somebody's website, we put testimonials and stuff like that so that a potential customer looking at our client's business will see social proof and have a level of trust built. So it sounds like it's kind of similar to that, just on a much bigger scale as far as a local and I guess even somewhat a national level. I mean, I know you work with like some big franchise companies with over 600 franchises and stuff. So, I mean, it's not just this local community.
Exactly. So, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, like, let's get into why PR. Why did you start this company? Why, what feeds you in this?
Yeah, I started my career in marketing, and really I worked for a retail store, and I fell in love with ad copy. And I was always a writer. from a very young age. My teachers told me I'm great at writing. So I liked writing ad copy. And I worked for various companies in lots of different industries, from professional services to manufacturing companies. I wrote hang tags for luggage that you buy in a department store. I stumbled into PR. I was working in marketing, and a CFO asked me, can I write a press release? We just bought another company. So, I started doing that, and I fell in love with that. I found out that PR is really a tactic of marketing that is very specialized. And it was just fun for me. So, worked my way up. I worked for a couple of different agencies. I got a company on Celebrity Apprentice, and they sold. And I guess everything led me to starting my own agency.
That's awesome. Very
Yes,
cool.
it started with a passion of writing. That's really cool. And now you're an author, so it's like kind of come full circle for you.
It did, yes.
That's exciting.
Thank you.
I love it. What's been the as we record this, it's April of 2021. What's been the what was the most challenging thing for you in business last year?
I've always believed in myself, and I know that sounds arrogant, but I knew that if I had the opportunity to create something that I fully believe in, that I could do it. And last year, March was just a scary time. I didn't know if I could keep my employees on payroll. I didn't know if we could keep the doors open. I didn't know what was going to happen. And just kind of being out of control a little bit frightened me. So we did lose some clients in April. We represent companies in lots of different industries. Home service, we happen to be the #1 agency in that space. But we had restaurant clients, we had hospitality clients, and they struggled overnight, lost 90% of their business. So really shifting gears quickly to focus on the clients that were considered essential and figure out how we could help them more. We didn't go to our clients and say, we're going to charge you more for this or that. We just said, do you need any help talking to your employees? We can help you with internal communications. We started doing more of that, and word got out. We started doing a lot of crisis work. We ended last year only about 8% down. So I consider that a huge success. And part of it was just being able to shift quickly and help our clients as much as we could.
That's awesome. I love that. I love the mindset focus of how can we help, right? And I think that the businesses that truly live by that motto are the ones that, regardless of what their bottom line looked like last year, maybe it was up, maybe it was down, maybe it was flat, maybe they almost went out of business. But the people that focused on the serving side are the ones that are going to slingshot out of this in amazing ways. Super cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, how, for a home service company, how do I know if I need PR, or like what level does somebody start having this conversation with an agency?
That's a great question. So many people think that, once I get to a certain level or a certain amount of revenue, that's when I'll bring in PR, but really you need it from day one. You just need a different amount. And some of it you can do yourself. When you decide to open your business, you've got to share that, so you can reach out to the local newspaper, write your own press release, get that news out. If you decide to add plumbing service to your HVAC business, you need to tell the media that. There are ways to do PR from day one. It does not have to be a retainer where you're monthly doing something. It could be once a year, it could be once a quarter. Sharing PSAs, National Electrical Safety Month is a great time for electrical businesses to talk about extension cords and fire hazards in the home and Christmas trees. So, looking for those opportunities to be the expert and educate the homeowner is for any business, really in any industry, they can use PR. So really from day one, there's no specific size of a company that needs PR.
And so where does somebody start, right? So, okay, so I understand the concept of, I'm an expert, right? Electrician, whatever. I'm an expert, and my customers have these concerns and they should know about this type of stuff. I write a little blurb about Christmas trees and extension cords and things to watch out for. What do I do with it after that if I don't have an agency?
Yeah, if you don't have an agency, introduce yourself to your local media. Contact the editor of the newspaper and just introduce yourself as a source. You're going to need to build some credibility. How long has your company been in business, or how long have you been offering that service? What are your credentials? Share that in a non-salesy but helpful way to the journalist. That's really your entry right there. And then if you can look for chamber events or things where you can meet other business owners, a lot of times it's who you know, and they can introduce you to someone. You can get your company on TV. It's all very beneficial and valuable, but it's kind of it's sort of a soft sell approach.
Yeah. So I can speak from experience. So I tried this a long time ago, like when we had originally started WIT. I reached out to like some editors and the local paper. And what I did is, like, initially back then, I sent a little email. I was completely trying to sell, right? Like I was trying to sell selfishly to get my company's name in the paper, but I was coming from a way of, oh, hey, like I'm going to offer this to you as help, but it completely, like, you could see right through it. And so I never really got a response. And I followed up a couple times, but just never really got anything. Like in this whole PR world, if somebody's doing this and they don't get a response once or twice, do you keep going? Like it takes time, right? Like it takes consistent, like just keep following up, right? Like do it until you get a response or until you build a relationship with that person, right?
Yes, to an extent, but you get blocked or blacklisted from the journalist if you're bugging too much. So we would caution you to be careful. But sometimes actually, I read a statistic somewhere that said like 80 to 90% of the news that you read in the newspaper or that you see on TV was pitched by a PR professional. So if you think about that, if you're not having that success and you have stories that are actually newsworthy, you probably want to call a PR professional at least for some advice and find out what you might be doing wrong. It might be too salesy. Journalists want to either, their purpose is to either sell newspapers, sell magazines, sell ads, or sell commercials on TV. And so they need the viewership, they need the readership. They see through a company that's just looking at PR for marketing purposes, and they really need that educational component so that they add value to their readers or to their viewers. So if you can position your news in a way that helps the reader or helps the viewer, they're more likely to buy into that story. And our team is a lot of former journalists, so they know how to spin a story into something that's going to get the attention of a journalist.
Yeah, Heather, you had mentioned, sharing PSAs, even like around the holiday season. You had mentioned like the hazards of a Christmas tree or making sure the extension cord is set up properly, like those little things. And it got me thinking of like really the human side of things. So instead of thinking about it from a marketing or a selling standpoint, like think about it, like create a human story around it or what you're seeing that concerns you as an electrician or a home service business owner of any kind. And then that's going to connect not only probably with the journalists themselves, but their audience, right? So that kind of got the wheels spinning in my head as some good, easy places to start potentially.
Yeah, and sometimes the tips press release, or if you're pitching a journalist with home tips, you might give them some tips that are services that you don't sell. If you're talking about protecting your home and you say, you want to have your gutters cleaned frequently, you might not offer gutter cleaning or gutter service, but being that credible expert in the home is a way for you to be that source for the media.
Mm-hmm. And
it makes me think a lot about intention, right? So let's go back to my example, right? When I pitched and did not get anywhere, my intention was selfish. My intention was to get my company noticed so that I could grow. And that was it, right? And I was trying to spin it in a way that I knew that they might want stuff. And so now, as I continue to grow personally and professionally over the years, I think a lot about intention, right? So now when I sit down to do something, Davis will watch me do this all the time, or watch me question things. I'm like, okay, what's the intention, right? What's the intention and what's our objective? And so if I start with the intention of, hey, my intention here is to share my knowledge and experience with homeowners and people in the market or my community that could benefit from it. Or my intention is to help this editor, do their job, right? Like get some good information so that now they can have good value to the readers. If I start with that as my intention, it's going to shape how I write my letter to the editor, or my, whatever it is that I'm writing. So I think that, it's a small little tweak that took me years to figure out, but what's the intention? And people on the other side will feel that will come through if you set your intention. And then as a byproduct, you'll get the press and the accolades or the marketing side of it. That's a byproduct of a different intention.
Exactly. Yeah. You want to think of it being mutually beneficial. It's helping you, but it's also helping them. And if you think about your news that way, you can create a story that's going to be beneficial for them.
Yeah.
So Heather, what about like volunteering events in your community, or sponsoring, a local little league team, or like what are maybe even some more low-hanging fruit, or things that people might already be doing, like even participating in their church or doing community cleanups or anything like that? Like, do you see companies doing that? And is that worthwhile from a PR standpoint?
That's a good question. And that's one of the biggest pushbacks we hear from our clients who are doing a lot in the community. They don't want to tell anybody. And we really advise against that strategy, because number one, if you're helping your community, some people out there want to do business with people they feel are giving back, and they don't want to do business with companies they feel are not giving back. But also it helps you recruit. And we know recruiting technicians is one of the biggest challenges these guys have. And so, people, especially younger generations, want to work for companies that they feel good about. And if you're sharing your news, you're sharing your charitable giving, you're going to attract more employees. So one of the strategies that I recommend in the book too is, rather than pick 50 different organizations to give a couple $100s to, choose one or two to cut a big check or do something big, and then they'll share it. You're helping them in ways that they didn't have before. They have a partner now, and they're likely to share that news with, their following through newsletters, through their social media efforts and all of that. And so it becomes more of a partnership rather than just kind of cutting checks here and there. It's also more newsworthy if you cut a $5,000 check than a $200 check 50 times, so, and I know that math was wrong, but just think about it in terms of can you make a bigger impact with fewer organizations and try to make a small impact with a lot?
Okay, and that could be time or money or a combination thereof, I assume.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. That's really good advice, actually. Because I think it's almost counterintuitive. A lot of people think, well, I want as many touch points as I can possibly have. But to your point, the impact is then reduced with every touch point. So it's like, just keep it to one or two and be consistent and be impactful.
Yeah.
Cool.
How do you coach your clients through the mindset battle that you just referenced? Because I know I have conversations with Andrea, our CEO, and we talk about this stuff, right? Like, we do a lot of really cool things for our team, for other members in the community, and we really don't talk about it a lot, right? Because it's almost like it feels, and I know this is wrong, so help me and everybody else get over this. It feels like sharing it somehow cheapens the contribution, right? Like, I think that's what you're naming as well a second ago. Like, how do we help us think through that a little bit better so that now it's like exciting to share it and it's not cheapening the experience, it's actually adding to it?
Think about it this way, that your company is successful enough to be able to make an impact to some of these nonprofit organizations. And a lot of these nonprofits are really reliant on volunteers. They can't afford a PR agency. They do their marketing through volunteers, and it may or may not be that impactful. And so if you are able to use your resources to help spread awareness that this organization exists and share all the great things they're doing, not only are you helping them with PR, you're also encouraging other businesses. I see that and be inspired to give. So it's really not self-serving if you do it in the right way. And one of the strategies that we use is if one of our clients partners with a nonprofit or children's hospital or something like that, we contact their PR people or their executive director, and we write the press release. Usually there's exceptions, but we write the press release like it's coming from them, saying, this organization receives $5,000 from this company, instead of this company gives $5 to this organization. It's a slight change, but having the news come from the recipient feels less self-serving.
That's great. The little tips and tricks from a professional. That, because I mean, the mindset piece around that is a big thing. I mean, if you're naming it, I felt it before. I know Andrea, our CEO, feels it. I'm sure Davis has thought about this too. But
yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
Well, and I like your spin on this, Heather, of like, it should be inspirational. You should be inspired by the acts that you're doing with your community, and therefore inspiring others to do the same. So it's kind of like this little bit of a kumbaya, spread positivity, but it's true. And we do get caught up, especially, I find myself getting caught up, like, do I really want to share this? What's the right way to say this? It seems a little self-indulgent, but it's not. Especially if it's something you're proud of, then, you should be proud to share it.
Yeah.
I always used to think if you always did the right thing or always did great things, like eventually it would just get noticed and magic would happen, right? Like, I thought a lot of these bigger companies that were just always getting noticed in the news and getting accolades and stuff, I was like, oh man, they just kept doing the right thing for years and years and years. And then eventually they got noticed, and that's how they got it. Now I more understand that, no, that's somebody putting that information in front of those people. And I mean, the stat that you kind of mentioned, like 80 to 90% of stuff in a newspaper or whatever was pitched from PR. Like, so you have to be willing to get over whatever mindset blocks we have and be willing to share that information. If you want to partake in that, I mean, I guess you could fly under the radar forever and ever if that's really a big deal. But I think most of I think it's important to do. And I love, like Davis mentioned, this whole kind of spin on, like, we're helping them too by getting PR. Like, we're contributing even additionally to that cause or that community or whatever it is.
Yeah, you can have a bigger impact than just your financial donation by doing that.
Yeah. Do you have, for some entertainment, do you have like a story where, somebody did PR like all wrong, like you saw it happen, or you saw it out in the world? You don't have to name companies, but like, I don't know, does anything funny come to mind that you've seen like anywhere in the news? And if you want, we can come back to it and let it simmer in your mind for a little bit. I just thought of the question. I was like, oh man, there's so much, so many people that try to like cover stuff up or just do it completely wrong.
A botched PR effort out there. That's hilarious.
There are a lot, and I'd say fortunately, no clients come to mind. But one of the things that we do a little differently than a lot of PR agencies is we talk to our clients about crises almost day one. And when we give a crisis strategy to a client, we come up with scenarios of things that they could do wrong that maybe they never even thought about. And so that helps them prevent things from happening. And I want to do that because I don't want those late night calls, about, hey, our technician was arrested for DUI and he was in our truck. I don't want to have those calls. So if we can help prevent that's better. But I have seen some companies make mistakes largely because they assumed that they were having a friendly conversation with the journalist, and that if they shared certain things that it would be off the record. We tell our clients nothing is ever off the record. If you say it, just expect it to be in the story. I've had a couple of clients that said stuff before they really could think about it, and it's ended up as the headline because it's the most sensational of all the things that they said. So, that fortunately it was funny. It wasn't terrible, but just nothing is ever off the record. If you say it, you can expect it to be in the
Journalists gonna be journalists. What can we say?
Yeah.
That's good to know. I mean, of the two of us, Davis, I don't know anybody in this conversation that would go off the cuff and say stuff, randomly and quickly.
Oh yeah, I don't know anybody. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not me. I would never do anything like that.
We got to keep Stephen away from the journalists here.
I agree.
Sensational headlines before we know it.
Yeah.
So interesting. One little note I want to add. At the end of the day, we are a marketing company, and I do want to kind of like throw this in there about how PR and your like local SEO and building both your offline and online presence, I think, go hand in hand. And I think this is just an important note in terms of building your brand overall and how all of these things work together. And I was just talking with our lead SEO earlier this week about, creating backlinks, developing relationships within your community, leveraging your existing relationships, to have backlinks to and from their website to your website. And I think that plays hand in hand, Heather, with what we're talking about here today in terms of how you're getting your name out there from a PR standpoint. So I think just for our audience's benefit, kind of having all that in the back of their head and how all of these functions will work together to grow your brand is really cool and something that they should be focused on if they're not already. And, putting some consistent effort into building, because it's not only going to be just a story that sits there for a couple days or an hour or, 15 minutes on a news spot. It's actually going to last and build and grow over time.
That's a good question. And PR goes hand in hand with marketing, digital efforts. We do hope that when stories run about our clients that they include a backlink. We do. That happens. It doesn't always. The journalists do what they want. We can ask, but sometimes it doesn't happen. But some of these newspapers, if you're a company in Boston and you get a story in the Boston Globe, that story may show up ahead of your website. So, when you get those stories about your company, you want them to be positive so that if somebody's searching your company name online, they find good things. PR does help with that. It's definitely not a replacement for digital efforts. It does go hand in hand, but it's also you don't really do PR for SEO. You do PR for ultimate credibility and perception of who your brand is. So it can help and it can complement your efforts, but it doesn't replace it.
Yeah, good point.
And you know what, Heather, one of the things I love about you is you came from a marketing background. So you understand all of that. Whereas I've seen some other PR agencies, like they just focus on, look what I did. I got you in this, this paper. And they easily could have requested a backlink or something like that to add value to everything else that that client was doing. And that's one of the cool things that I love about you guys. You're kind of always looking at it from this marketing background as well, saying, okay, we're going to do all of this. And how can we make sure that it builds over here too, and it builds your SEO and just other things like that. So that's super cool that you guys do that. I want to, as we kind of start to come to a close here, one of the things that, you and I have talked about this for a long time, and I know people ask all the time as far as PR and what should they expect as like a return on investment, right? Because especially in the home service industry, which I think we're slowly starting to get away from this mindset of, I spend $1, what's my exact ROI, right? Like that's the old mindset. And now we're getting into a more, a different type of owner and a different mindset that's like, hey, I understand that I can invest money and it'll come back in a ton of different ways, maybe that I can't actually measure super easily. So how do you measure PR? Like, yeah, I guess, how do you measure PR? Like, what should somebody expect and how do they know that you're winning for them?
Yeah, that's a perfect question. And it's one that if I could figure out the silver bullet, I could make a ton of money. But, PR is all about brand awareness, and you can spend a lot of money doing surveys and find out your market share and whether that's growing or staying the same. But really it comes down to word of mouth, and are people talking about you? Do people know who you are? Market share in home service is a lot smaller than people think it is. At Clockwork Home Services, we used to spend a lot of money finding out how many people in your market actually know who you are. And it's so small because there's hundreds of competitors. You're competing with big companies. You're also competing with the one-man trucks. So really PR is about the awareness. Do people hear about you? Are they saying they heard about you? But there's ways your technicians can leverage it, your dispatch callers, asking questions. How did you hear about us? Using the credibility. If your CEO's on CBS, are you pushing that out on social media? Are you linking to it on your website for credibility? Are you using it in those conversations with the homeowners to, leverage it? So it's really hard to measure dollar for dollar, but you should be hearing that it's working. You just know over time. Your friends and family say, hey, I saw you on TV last night, or you're selling more. Your technicians are going into the home and they're closing more. So it's a lot of little things.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. It's all around kind of awareness, right? Like be aware of what's going on and be willing to lean in and ask those questions and stuff that you normally wouldn't do, or that you can't see on your dashboard of exact numbers of every dollar spent. And how long does it take for PR to kind of start working or start showing something, right? So like if somebody hires you, how long does it typically take to start, getting things in local publications or starting to, just move that ball forward? Is it 3 months? Is it a year? Is it 18 months? Like, what should somebody kind of expect as like an investment and a willingness to grow with it before they start kind of gauging and judging it?
Yeah, another difficult question. It really depends on a few things. It depends on what news you have. If we start out working with someone who has news, maybe it's a big milestone anniversary or a new service offering or something like that, They might see results, in print or on TV within 4 weeks. It might take a company a few times of us introducing them to their media. If they're in a major media market, it might take a little bit longer to get the attention for that company. But the longer we work with clients, the more stories we get. So we have some clients that we've worked with for 4 years that whenever there's any kind of weather event or anything, fatbergs have been in the media lately about, flushable wipes are not flushable, stop flushing them. The media hears about that and they see a national story and call us and say they want to talk to the client. So, the longer we work with someone, the more stories they're going to get. It's very momentum building. I used to have a client say that PR is like planting an oak tree. It takes a while to get growing, but once it's there, it's solid. So I guess that's a good analogy.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And it's, I'm asking these questions because these are the ones that we hear all the time. And I mean, I know the ones that you hear, like when I listen to conversations you're having with prospective clients, these are the ones that people want to know. And I think that other PR agencies sell like, oh no, you're going to get this right away and you're going to get this right away. And so they're over promising and under delivering. And, just like in the digital space, like we want to protect the name brand or the brand of the things that we do by delivering truth, right? Like this stuff takes time and that's okay. So just be prepared to use it as an investment.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, Davis, did I miss anything? Or Heather, do you have anything like in the whole grand scheme of everything that you feel called to add or talk about?
No, I mean, I appreciate you mentioning Orange Orchard. That was I love animals. And so that was just kind of a personal passion, but really it's not a nonprofit. It's just a spinoff agency from Ripley. It's the same team. We provide the same services, just to different types of companies and nonprofits.
Awesome. I love it.
Heather,
we'll make sure to put a link to it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, let us know where we can find, we have ripleypr.com, but where they can find your sustainable oriented agency.
Yeah, it's orangeorchardpr.com.
Awesome. Okay. And where can our audience find you on Facebook or on social media or anywhere else that they want to get more information?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, Heather Ripley. I think I'm wearing a jiu-jitsu gi right now. I just got promoted, so I'm proud of that. I got another stripe on my belt. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, Heather Ripley #1. There is an actress named Heather Ripley, and I guess she took that one. Those are probably the 3 best ways to reach me.
Okay. We know who the true #1 Heather Ripley is. It's you, and it's right there in the URL.
Precise.
Yes.
Awesome. Right, or cool. Go to Heather for the book. You can pre-order on Amazon right now, right?
It's actually available. Yes, so you can order it, and it will ship in 2 days if you're a Prime member.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll put a link in the podcast notes. And so if you're looking for PR and you want to know a little bit more about like actually getting into it and stuff like that, go check out the book. That'll give you all of Heather's secrets that you can do yourself if you want to, if you're not ready to hire an agency.
Yes.
Awesome. So Stephen, I've got a couple recaps here, and then I'm sure you've got a couple as well, and we'll close this thing out.
Let's do it.
All right. So first of all, kind of recapping what PR is in the first place. PR is about developing relationships with your local media, newspaper, TV, etc. It's about building brand awareness and a positive reputation in your community. And I was surprised that 80 to 90% of news you see in the paper or on TV was pitched by a PR agency. That statistic was actually, it kind of makes sense now that I think about it, but it wasn't, kind of to our earlier point about how things are human oriented. They're not about selling. That was surprising. And You need PR from day one. It just depends on the amount of PR that you want to do. And don't be afraid to reach out to your local media outlets by sharing PSAs. Fire hazards is a good kind of example around holiday season. Make sure it's educational, make sure it's human oriented, and think about your intention. Your intention should be to share your knowledge and your expertise with your community in a beneficial way. So those are my key takeaways today.
Awesome. I only have 2 additional ones to that. Heather said, make sure it's mutually beneficial. So just think about that. Davis, you kind of mentioned the intention. So just make sure that what you're sharing is mutually beneficial. Remember that they have a job to do as well, and you can help them do that job. And then the whole thing around the mindset of sharing what you're doing in the community, right? That was really, really helpful. And just remembering that you're additionally benefiting that nonprofit community event, whatever it is, you're additionally benefiting them by sharing this type of stuff through PR. So it's like you get a second bite at the apple of helping the person or the nonprofit that you're already helping. And yeah, as a byproduct, it does help your company, but in no way, shape, or form does it cheapen what you're doing. It only exponentially adds to it. So that was a big one for me to take away. Just to have a little bit different reframe around the mindset about sharing those things that we're already doing. And it's an add-on to that.
Definitely. All right. Well, I want to thank our audience for listening to this episode of the Home Service Success Podcast. Join the discussion on the Home Service Marketing and Success Facebook group, or you can find more information at witdelivers.com. So thanks so much for listening, and have an awesome rest of your day.